I was a part of that process of actually seeing failure pretty up close.
Mm.
And I think I really learned so much from it. I think it taught me a lot about what it takes and also how to react and how to handle things and how to manage that process and how to grow and get back on your feet after that.
You're listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with your host, Michael Palmer. Listen each week as inspiring guests share their secrets of success to help you increase your confidence, work smarter, and build a business you love. This episode of The Successful Bookkeeper is brought to you by PureBookkeeping.com, the proven system to grow your bookkeeping business.
Welcome back to the Successful Bookkeeper Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Palmer, and today's show is going to be a fantastic one. Our guest has her own consulting agency, StoryWork, that helps leaders, entrepreneurs, and organizations find and execute their strategy to move with clear direction. Lauren Shippy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Michael. I'm so thrilled to be here.
It's great to have you. And I always like to start off with introducing yourself to our listener. So tell us a little bit about you, your career journey leading up to what you're doing today.
Absolutely. So I live in South Florida. I have a husband and two daughters. They are 11 and 9. Hardest job I have by far, harder than my work.
Absolutely.
But
what were the ages
rewarding.
again? It's the ages of your kids?
They're 11 and 9.
11 and 9. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And Southern, did you say Southern Florida or Southern California?
We're in South Florida.
South Florida. I don't know why I thought California. Anytime I heard South, I always think of California, but it's a Canadian thing, I guess.
Right. I know. Yeah. We're down here in South Florida. I grew up in the Northeast. So I grew up in the Philadelphia area my whole life prior to moving here about 12 years ago. And I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. We owned dealerships. And so I just grew up in the car business. Cool. It was just it's definitely a unique space for sure. And so I just grew up talking about business around the dinner table. I was an only child, so there was no sibling to talk to. It was just my parents and I talking about business. And so that's kind of where my journey started and my love for business and actually consulting. And I just remember thinking even early in my life, like I want to be able to help people figure out their path someday and create successful businesses. And so, the journey hasn't been linear. It's definitely a winding road. And our family had the opportunity to sell those dealerships. And so we're not in the business anymore, but that was a springboard for me to enter into entrepreneurship. So from there, I worked for several different startups, just helping build them. So I started in, cold calling, sales, which I absolutely hated, but it was a great experience, marketing. And then I moved into operations and building out systems for companies. And I really loved that process. And then I would say, it really morphed into leadership and wanting to really pour into people and to build them up. Because what I realized, later in my career is that it's really all about the people. I could make as many spreadsheets as I wanted, which is good and right and necessary and needed. But it's also got to be balanced with the people and them knowing what they're capable of. And so that's when I started StoryWork about 7 years ago. And we really practice what I call identity-based strategy. And what that means really simply is just seeing and hearing and knowing the leaders that I work with, drawing out who they really are and helping them get a really clear plan or a map to operate in that. And that looks like how they lead. And it also looks like how they share their message with the world, which is marketing.
Wow. Very cool. 7 years. So you've been at this a while. And I love hearing some of the early stage ups and downs as well throughout the journey. What were some remarkable moments?
Oh, definitely. So I would say that failure is, that's always, it's such a cliche, but that failure really shapes us like more sometimes than success. And some of the companies that I worked for, the startup companies, actually ended up failing. I mean, we were, this was during 2008-ish time, and in real estate. And so I was a part of that process of actually seeing failure pretty up close. And I think I really learned so much from it. I think it taught me a lot about what it takes, and also how to react and how to handle things, and how to manage that process, and how to grow and get back on your feet after that. So I think watching that from a larger perspective really marked my journey and taught me so much. And then, I would say that I think the other thing was deciding to start StoryWork and go out on my own. I think it's easy sometimes to be a part of just a team that's given to you, and to be under an umbrella. But when you step out on your own, you no longer have that sort of safety in a way, or this covering, I want to say. It's like it's you, yourself, and you. And so that was the point where I had to figure out, okay, what do I want this to be? What do I want this to look like? And I've got to build my own processes and systems for myself and figure out who's on my team. So I think that was definitely when it got real for me.
I bet. It's so interesting when you talk about it, and often any one of our listeners right now, sometimes, all the different journey points along the way, going through it, when you look back, it's like you forget those challenges. And even just hearing you talk about, all of those, the mechanism of business, when you're working for another business, there's so many pieces and parts, and it's all put together in some way, whether it's functional or not functional, it's still
Right.
a machine. And then you start on your own, and there's only one gear, that's you.
That's right.
And then you got to put together the machine. And that's a lot of learning, a lot of tool and dying, if you will, to put it all together. So it's interesting. So now you're working with customers today to help them get that strategy. And interesting identity-based strategy. So you start with the individuals and then build the strategy around them. Love that. And what would you say, like going through the failures as well, let's maybe talk a little bit about that, is seeing how, what do you think some of the key factors? Was it environmental, like the real estate crash? Was it internally a lack of systems? Like what were some of the things that you saw, like, wow, those people, this is a thing that when you don't get it right, things go wrong?
Yeah, absolutely. I think as I look back over the different experiences over the years and where I've encountered this, I would say that the first thing was really leadership. And I think that it sounds so cliche again, and leadership is used so much, but I think it was really due to a lack of clarity on knowing like who they were and how they were supposed to operate in that season. So like, you can know who you are, and you can, have a pretty clear objective, but when things shift that you can't control, like the environment, right? The economic state of things, I think that's when you have a choice. How are you going to lean into that? How are you going to pivot? How can you shift? What changes can you make, quickly on your feet? What partners can you draw in? Things of that nature. And so I think it really does rise and fall on the leadership of the company, because ultimately it's that responsibility that the leader carries to be able to move and shift, and also anticipate and discern, I think, different seasons based on where things are, in the world. So that's probably what I would say looking back on it.
Very cool. And so that's a big part of what you do now to help them
Yeah.
get that figured out so that they don't end up in the same situation. You talk a lot about strategy and clarity with your clients. What are the distractions in business that happen? Maybe talk a little bit about it's a key thing that you talk about is distractions that hold them back, and how do they get to that point where they're being distracted?
Sure. There are so many distractions for all of us right now, right? I mean, I feel like I've got to kind of fend off distraction every day too, myself, even when I coach clients on this. But I think one of the biggest things is technology right now, and the things tied to it. And it can be used for a lot of good, but it can also be used for, I think sometimes destructive habits or patterns. We've all got social media accounts, and, as a business owner, you might feel the need that, you've got to be on there and you've got to be interacting and you've got to be, reading and keeping up with things, which is all important. But when you don't actually set the priorities for your time, then it can become a slippery slope of just getting consumed by it or turning to it when you don't really want to face the thing that you've got to do. And so we always talk with clients about, okay, once you have your map, like once you have your priorities for that week or that month or that quarter, and you know where you're going to go, then it's setting your time according to that. And do your time and your priorities match? And I've really had to look at myself over the years, and often even the answer for me is no, right now they're not, but it's just asking that question and saying, where don't my time and priorities match? Whether that comes to how you're spending your time out of work or in work, right? And so I really think it's all connected. So when we work with leaders, we don't just focus on their business, we also focus on their life and what does that look like, and where are their priorities. And so it's just asking that simple question and adjusting all the time. We constantly need a reset, I think, especially right now with the speed of digital communications in our world.
Absolutely. It is talking about the mechanism of the business and the machine. Once you've built it and it's rolling along and you're in that machine, it can be easy to just, productivity is happening all the time, right? Is it good productivity? Maybe not, depending on what have you set. But if you're just going through the motions, we think of our listener right now, they have a bookkeeping firm, they're whatever their business is at this state, it's just it could just go through the motions, and that would be okay.
Yeah.
Yet it might not be fulfilling on the listener's vision for what they want. Like I want to have more money, or have, build a team around me, or be able to take more time off, whatever the case may be. If that's not really clear and there's not a clear pathway to get there, your time could be used in a way that's not actually, it seems like it's effective, but you're actually not moving yourself towards those outcomes. I'm sure you see that all the time. Maybe let's talk a little bit about how they can maybe avoid those distractions or eliminate them so that they don't get into that situation.
Yeah, that's really good. And I love what you just said there, tying it back to the listener and what they're going through, what you all are going through as business owners, right, in the bookkeeping space, because that's really what we practice at StoryWork, that identity-based strategy. Like, who are you? And let's step into your shoes. Let's come side by side and look at the challenges that you might face where you are. And, I think that purpose is just as important. Purpose is like what fuels us in our businesses. And so we can set it and forget it, like you said. And I'm a partner at a marketing agency, and one of our sticking points was always that we don't set it and forget it. We audit results in our own work every month. And so it's the same with your business. Like, you could probably set it and forget it in some measures, and there's great systems and processes for that. But when it comes to the overarching vision of the business and your life, like you were saying, I think that's where you don't want to set it and forget it. So I guess to recap, you want to set it and forget it in terms of your systems. Obviously, you need to audit them from time to time, but you don't want to set it and forget it in terms of your vision and where you're going in this quarter, right? And so, I think looking at what do I want? Do I want to spend more time actually doing this over here that's away from the business? Or do I want to spend more time, devoted to coaching people alongside of my business, or whatever that looks like, for you? I think once you define that, like once you say that out loud or write it down, that carries weight. Like it always activates something. So I would really encourage you just to, if you don't know what that is right now, write it out or speak it out to your team or trusted advisor, whoever that is. Because once you do that, it starts to take on a life of its own. That's what I find with clients and even with myself. Once I say it's something, it's like a declaration. It's like putting your stake in the ground. Like, I'm going to do this, and this is actually really what I want. And then you'll see that you're going to take steps toward that. And then you can see where does my time not align, and what things do I need to remove? And so that can look like everything from technology, like taking a break from, certain social media accounts. Like right now, I'm actually not on my personal account. My team is just posting on my business account, right? So I'm still keeping up with things, but I'm taking a hiatus because I know I need to clear more space for some new things that I'm working on. So that's just an example of how you can clear your time. It can even look like, certain relationships or managing your communications and how you're responding. It's just all about intentionality at the end of the day. It's all about stopping and thinking and not falling into that set it and forget it pattern or rhythm that can be comfortable for us.
That's right. And I think this industry, bookkeeping industry, and our listener, it's easy, like work is a distraction. The work never ends. The businesses don't stop producing invoices and stop having revenue, and, taxes don't stop needing to be figured out, all of that. And so if you don't have that intentionality, you could just fill your time doing the work. And many love the work, which is another, it's a great thing. They love doing the work. Thing. But if it's not, if there's a dissatisfaction, if you love doing the work and everything's fine and happy life, great, keep doing that. If there's that agitation to grow and build something different, or change, or have more time off, like we've said, then I love this intentionality and clearing space and even speaking out or writing out, like you say, put that vision somewhere, get it out. Because if it's just in the head, it can morph and slip around and like kind of a, ship in the night. You don't know exactly what it is or where it is, but speaking it out and speaking it out and writing it out, get something. And that, there's so much, everyone's got their distraction, but when you create that space, it needs to fill with something else. And so if there's not something else, like you've just mentioned, it could just fill up with some other distraction. So is there strategies to keep this going with your clients? What routines, or is there things they can put in their life to actually keep this going? If I was talking about exercise or getting in shape, we have a plan for that, and every day it can be hard to actually execute on it, even though we do have a plan. We know what we're trying to do here, but it's like, something gets in the way. I'm sure your clients fall down, and how do you help them get back up?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for all of us, that can be a challenge. It's, sometimes, because I like to say we're not robots, we're people, and so sometimes it's okay to allow yourself to have rest or to have a break from it. But when forming the routines, James Clear, Atomic Habits, is just, he is the guru on this. If you haven't read that or listened to that or read a summary, I highly recommend it. When I filmed our e-course, the Strategy Masterclass, a couple years ago, we did a whole section just on habit development and routines. And a lot of it was inspired by him. And one of the things that he talks about is habit stacking, which can just be a tactical tool that you can use. And it's just saying, like, when I wake up, after I brush my teeth, then I will sit down and write one sentence or my
Interesting.
top 3 things. And so that routine of just the habit stacking will help you say, okay, I know once I brush my teeth, then I'm doing this. The other thing that really helps is knowing how to manage your energy. So I would say for all the listeners out there, think about what is your most energized time of day? And for some, it's the morning. For some, it's maybe later in the afternoon. For me, it's definitely first thing in the morning. So, like right now, I'm working on writing 3 mornings a week. And so I know that literally I use the habit stacking. After I brush my teeth, I sit down in that chair and I don't do anything else. Because if I go do anything else, I won't sit down in that chair and write. So, what I've learned is that I set the course, which is I'm writing for 6 weeks right now, 3 times a week, and we'll see what it looks like at the end of that. I'm using habit stacking. So after I brush my teeth, I will sit down and write for a bit. And then I'm also marking off my progress. So you can use this in a tangible way. I've seen some people actually use just like a mason jar and paper clips and put one in every single time they do whatever that thing is that they want to do, that habit. Calendars, if you have a desk calendar, you're crossing it off or you're making a check mark, some way that you're acknowledging, I did this. And it seems elementary, but it feels really good when you do it because you can check that box, especially in your industry, where it is task oriented and routine oriented. This really fits in nicely with that space. So those are just a couple of things that I've learned over the years.
Beautiful. I love the visual checking off of the box. It is a great way. It's something simple, but it's very effective, I think, because you see it right there every day.
Yeah.
And I mean, it could be right there in your bathroom, right?
Yep.
So that you
Put it
can't
anywhere.
miss it. I think that's part of the problem that I've found sometimes with electronic things is that it's very easy for those to just disappear into the computer unless you open it up and go and take a look. Whereas a piece of paper, a tactile, something physical, sometimes is a nice interruption in the digital world that can be very effective. Not necessarily in all situations, but for something like this where you're trying to impact your habit stack, as you say, that could be a real, did I stack the habit here today? X the box. And then
Yep.
when you look at it at the end of the month, it's like, hey, look, there's only a couple
amazing.
spaces missing, or look, I only got one.
Yep.
Dope. Need some extra help here. Gotta call Lauren
That's right.
to work on that, right? So that's a cool way. I think it's something I definitely want to put into place for myself right now, along the same lines, right? There's always distractions. So what is that simple thing? I remember the book, it was called The Power of Habit. Very similar concept, right? Is just start with one core habit, and then that core habit actually, it stacks, stuff starts to stack up around it.
Yeah, I think it was like about the mindset shift in general, right? Maybe that I remember that book. It was a really good one.
It was a good one, and it broke it down to like, if you just have the one, like if it was, okay, all I'm going to do is every day I'm going to do 10 push-ups. If you just did that, and he did that for 21 days, because he did do a lot of research around the concept of like, what does it take for this to become a routine versus, what does it take for it to become a habit? And it was about 21 days. That was the thing. And I know that also we're talking about cliches today, the 21-day thing. There was a lot of research done because the fellow that wrote it was an investigative reporter, and that's his big thing, was research, and did a ton of it. So the stack, though, and I haven't read Atomic
Atomic Habits. Yeah, it's really
I know
good.
everybody's talked about it. I've heard about it for years. It's just not something I've actually gotten into, but I do want to read it. But I love that concept of the stack, and I think it goes along with the power of habit. Is that they talked about if you quit smoking, right? Smoking's a habit. If you quit smoking, or if you actually just improved, like went for a walk every day, that habit would actually end up potentially impacting the smoking and make that easier to quit because you've got this habit of being doing something that's making you more healthy so that it starts to stack on itself around other habits. Interesting concept.
Yeah, it's just something that you can kind of grab onto, as you're charting your course and then, breaking that down into habits. I've just found it to be just super practical and applicable, And so, again, my reminder would be to think about the time of day also that you want to practice this new habit because you want to set yourself up for success. If you're going to try to do it at your sleepiest time of day, then it's not, it's probably not going to go well. So make sure that when you're doing this, you really are setting yourself up. Or like, what are the ideal conditions to practice this new habit?
Agreed. And also the patterns of the environment, like you have children, I have children.
Yeah.
There's times when that's just not going to happen.
Yes.
And so it's like, oh, this is my time to do it. It's like, no, Dad, I need this, but it's like,
yeah.
Okay. I'm not the
like
priority
that's not
here.
going to happen right now.
Yeah. I'm not the boss here when the kids are around.
That's right.
So setting ourselves up for success versus setting up for failure. And I think getting back to that other piece there is like small wins.
Yes.
Often,
that's right.
We see it all the time. People like, oh, I bought a gym membership. I'm going to go every day. This is it. Jan 1, we're doing this. And then Jan 13th, it's empty in the gym. Because it's just such a big change to the patterns that it doesn't actually sustainable. So anything that we can do that's small, incremental, help. I'd love to know some of the other, like you talked about an e-course. I'd love to know some other business tips or like resources you might have that help people tuck into this type of concept and learn more from you on improving their productivity and having a more clear plan.
Yeah, definitely. The Strategy Masterclass is an online course that I have. It's still out there. It's available, and it just really takes people through 3 different modules. And one is really the habits that we need, the foundation. Another is just how do we process all of this? So really, like the journey as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, and it's emotional growth oriented. And then the third part of it is this, what I call the strategy map. And that actually takes them through charting their course and getting that bigger picture vision and those priorities together. And that has just helped a lot. It's been pretty cool. We've led some masterminds on it over the years with groups of entrepreneurs and business owners where we walk through it every week and have that type of accountability. So yeah, the Strategy Masterclass is out there. And then at StoryWork.co, my website, there's a bunch of free guides as well. And those guides, are printable too. If you're a person that likes pen and paper, that you can print those out and go through those prompts and those questions. And that will help you in all kinds of different ways reach those goals that you have.
Wonderful. That's fantastic. So, StoryWork.co and some resources there. And how would they find the master class?
So the masterclass is actually on teachable.com. That's
Okay.
a pretty common site. And
Yep.
it's just called the Strategy Masterclass with Lauren Shippy. So you
Okay,
can find
cool.
that there. Yeah.
Awesome. So we can put those in there. Lauren, this has been fantastic. If you have any last minute tips or things that you think our listener would benefit from, we can tackle those, or we can thank you and say goodbye.
Yeah, I would just say thank you so much for having me. And, I'd say just as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, just remember the journey isn't always linear. And sometimes, when you're going through a season of wandering or you feel like you're on a winding road, you can always ground yourself in these habits and routines, right? In your most inspired time of day. And I would say just making space for space is the most important thing you can do as a business owner, to recenter yourself and get your plan if you're feeling off course.
Beautiful. I love that. And it's forgiving, right? It's like knives get dull. They don't always stay sharp. So it's okay to go and sharpen the knife up. And as entrepreneurs, we get dull too. We need to step back and figure out what it looks like to sharpen our own knife and, slice up some tomatoes.
Yeah, it's a great analogy.
Sharp knife. Beautiful. Well, Lauren, this has been great. I want to thank you for your generosity, for coming and being on the show and sharing your expertise and journey. It's been our pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
Yes, absolutely. And we'll look forward to doing it again sometime in the future. And with that, we wrap another episode of the Successful Bookkeeper podcast. To learn more about today's wonderful guest and to get access to all sorts of valuable free business building resources, you can go to thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Until next time, goodbye.
You've been listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with Michael Palmer. For more information and to download the resources mentioned in this episode, please visit us at thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Thank you for listening.